So it's been from, pardon?
So we want to belong too.
Yeah, right. Well, I think we need to. We have some things in common there. Well, you know what? We can form our anti-Atlantica, our Stop Atlantica initiative can certainly include, you know, the broader groups. So he says Atlantica is just the name that many of us are now giving to the natural economic region that straddles the border between Quebec and the Maritimes on the one hand and northern New England and upstate New York on the other. Atlantica is about forging alliances with our neighbors to improve infrastructure and build the context that will allow us to combat together our common scourges of high unemployment, high out-migration, and low incomes. So that's the kind of rhetoric that's coming out of the Ames Institute. And if you review the many papers on their website, this is the kind of thing that you'll see there. The historical analysis of trade patterns and related transportation routes, analysis of all modes of transportation patterns for Atlantica, including the intermodal kind of analysis of how the ports and the railroads and the super corridor road corridors would develop. And you then see a lot of analysis about this gateway for North America. And already in terms of Halifax becoming a super port, they've worked with the Port Commission and the local governments to ensure that we keep on this track, and they now have super cranes and they can actually receive some of these mega super tank container ships that are going to replace the existing ones. They're called post-Panamax container ships because they're so big they no longer go through the Panama Canal, so they feel that even though it'll take a little longer, they can come through the Suez and across the Atlantic. And so now they're looking at there's 4 or 5 different ports along our seaboard, our Atlantic seaboard, which could be, you know, slated for as super ports. And so you should, I don't have the list of the ones down, but they're all located on these websites. So what's wrong with the idea of Atlantica? Well, we know, we're concerned obviously that it would open the way for the export of water, especially if you realize that, you know, that what could happen with a parliament that just ignores our laws and which accelerates the NAFTA kind of challenge to water, and all of these things we know that are problematic. And Maud Barlow, when she was speaking in New Brunswick a few weeks ago, she pointed these things out as well. If nobody but the corporate sector is welcome in these talks, what does it say about democracy, the environment, human rights, the concerns of working people, women's groups, faith-based groups? There are many groups that should have been there, and instead they had to have a parallel meeting, you know, which is typical of all of the globalization kinds of things. So in Canada, here are some of the reasons why we're concerned about about the SPP. Just before the SPP was signed in March of 2005, Maud and the Council of Canadians, they released a report that was just a runner-up to before they announced the SPP. Yeah, and in it, this leaked document said there was no item, not Canadian water, not Mexican oil, not American anti-dumping laws that are off the table. Rather, contentious or intractable issues will simply require more time to ripen politically. This is the rhetoric that there's, you know. That also elaborated that Canadian culture industries, agriculture, fresh water are likely to meet with stiff resistance, and that certain natural resources like Mexican oil and Canadian water are invested with greater emotion than those same natural resources in other countries. And so consequently, policy recommendations on these issues are best considered long-term goals. But they're definitely, you know, so our water is under threat, there's no doubt about that. And so what we're going to say there is that type of Atlantica, that type of a North American integration is not something that we want. I mean, we might look at other types. So anyway, I'm sorry I took a little more time, but we need to be aware, I think, of how fast it's accelerating, and right now it's coming to the fore, and people are starting to try to get the message out. So part of this exercise is how do we, what can we do coming out of this workshop to increase our networking and our effectiveness towards opposing this kind of North American integration, which threatens water.
Great. Thanks, that's great. Great.
It says new stuff. What was this meeting that just happened in Banff?
Yeah, September 14th, there was a meeting of kind of like a governance council of the three countries. And we don't know, but they're moving.
Like Rumsfeld was there, and
Yeah.
Robert Pastor, and this whole crowd of people was there at some secret mountain hideaway,
Yeah.
trying to figure out this stuff. I want to say just one or two things and get it into a little bit of discussion before we run out or our stomachs revolt. I am in favor of harmony, and I am in favor of harmonization. I think those are good concepts that I'm not against them. The problem with this is, again, it comes back to this question of who's writing the rules. When they say that it's all about improving competitiveness, what that means is improving conditions for business. How do businesses become more competitive? Well, by doing things like reducing their labor costs, by eliminating environmental standards, by sweeping away government regulations. That's what businesses mean by being more competitive. And this discussion at the same time, while they're talking about integration and speeding up the flow of commerce from the ports all through the United States, Mexico, and Canada, is happening at the same time that our U.S. Congress is approving billions of dollars or millions of dollars for hundreds of miles of fencing along the border with Mexico and militarizing the border. So this is not about the integration of the peoples of North America. This is about we're talking about making it harder for people to actually have relationships with each other, for people to be mobile, but increasingly make it easier for capital to be mobile. And that's not the type of harmonization that I'm interested in. I also find the similarity between this whole plan and what the Central Americans have been confronting through something called Plan Puebla Panama is very striking as a massive infrastructure project being developed there at the behest of the international financial institutions and sweeping away the power, authority, and sovereignty of local communities, peasants, indigenous people, to be able to control their own environment, all in the interest of speeding the pathway for commerce. And maybe there are some things that we can learn from them.